Dear learners, greetings of the day. I am Miss Rohini Jain, Assistant Professor, Department of Education, Lingya's Lalita Devi Institute of Management and Sciences, affiliated to Guru Gobind Singh Indraprastha University. Our session today is related to the course titled Human Growth, Behavior and Counselling with the course code BSW 124. Today's session deals with the topic Supportive and Behavioural Techniques in Counselling. Dear learners, let us outline the objectives of this unit. In the previous units of this course, we have studied the basic concept of counselling and the process involved in the process of counselling. In this unit, we shall focus on important techniques used in the counselling process. So, after completing this unit, you all should be able to know what are, first, what are the supportive techniques in counselling and what are the various elements involved in it. And second, you will be able to know what are the behavioral techniques in counselling with specific references to problem solving, rehearsal and role play along with the process of contracting. Dear learners, before seeing the techniques, let us briefly understand the objectives of our counselling process. In overall, there are 4 objectives of any process of counselling taken up. The first is to reduce the emotional distress which the client may be experiencing at the present moment. This could be due to the current ongoing problem which the client is facing or going through at the given moment. Dear learners, it is all very well known to us that such problems can cause severe emotional stress to the individual involved in the problem. Second, the other objective of counselling is to reduce any kind of dysfunctional or deviated behavior which the client may be manifesting or presenting because of his or her current problems or issues. The third one, to promote better adaptation of the client to his environment by developing his or her potential. In this objective, it is fulfilled that the counsellor should be able to use the best potential of the client so that he or she may be well adapted to the environment, that is, may be able to cope up very well with the given situation. And the fourth objective of counselling is to assist the client in important personal decisions, thereby helping in the decision making process of the individual client. So, these are the 4 main objectives of any process of counselling. During the initial session of counselling, these objectives are clearly spelled out and stated to the individual client and the specific goals are listed. That is, it is clearly mentioned as to what will be the expected outcomes of the counselling session which is held with the counsellor and the client. The counsellor always needs to use his or her intelligence, wisdom, subject matter expertise, interpersonal skills and experience in order to help the client achieve and attain the goals listed under these objectives. It is entirely up to the counsellor to be able to put together the best solution possible for the given client. To achieve all these objectives of counselling, dear learners, the counsellor needs to familiarize himself or herself with the important techniques that are used in counselling. For this, the counsellor must be clear as to which technique is to be used in which situation and also at what stage of counselling. Although these techniques are chiefly employed during the middle phase of counselling process, they can, however, be used at all phases of counselling, right from the beginning till the end of the counselling session. The appropriate use and timing of these techniques of counselling depends upon the situation, and it also depends upon the judgment of the counsellor. This unit describes all the techniques that a counsellor may employ during the course of counselling. All these techniques of counselling are classified under the following main two categories. First, supportive techniques, and the second, behavioral techniques. Dear learners, let us look at these specifically one by one in detail. Let us start with the supportive techniques first. Supportive techniques are general measures. As the name suggests, they will give support, they will give comfort, and they will guide the client. They are directed at reducing the client distress or problem or discomfort without specifically addressing the psychological and behavioral causes. This point is extremely important to understand, learners. The main focus of supportive techniques is simply to reduce the stress of the client. Here the main focus is not going to be what is the cause and how to address the cause of the problem. Thus, supportive procedures are declared as non-specific in nature. That is, they are used irrespective of the cause. They are not specific to any cause in particular. Let us move ahead. Supportive techniques can be used at any time during the counselling or the therapy session, but they are most commonly employed during the early phases of therapy. It is wiser to select this method during the initial phases of the counselling so that the client feels comfortable and relaxed. This is because during the later phases of therapy, more specific techniques may be required to be taken up. What are the different types of supportive techniques? Let us have a brief discussion about each one of these in detail. There are many supportive techniques which a counsellor might adopt during the counselling session. These are as follows. First one being the technique of ventilation. As the name suggests, ventilation means when the counsellor allows the client to speak or to be vocal about his or her problems without any kind of restriction or limitations or inhibition. Ventilation is considered to be a very important technique in therapy, particularly during the early phases. It is also used in the initial so-called ice-breaking sessions where the client and the counsellor are getting used to each other. They are getting to know each other better, which is during the early phases. Coming to the importance of ventilation technique, it provides the counsellor with the opportunity to learn more about the client as well as his or her problems. This process will eventually help the counsellor to understand his or her clients even better. Second, it provides the client with an opportunity to speak. This is extremely important because usually clients feel that they do not get adequate or sufficient chances to speak out whatever they are feeling. It is very likely that prior to entering counseling or therapy, the client has heard a lot of people giving him or her advice, but they are rarely listening to him or her or his or her problems. Ventilation enables the client to get everything off his or her mind. Whatever the client has been holding, the problem, the stress for a very long while, he or she can get rid of it by just simply talking about it. And we have all experienced this in our daily lives also. The moment we talk about a problem with someone, we do feel a little lighter and we feel relaxed and comfortable. The third point is that as the client speaks, he obtains a feeling of relief because his or her problems are no longer just his or her own. Now it has been shared with another person, and after the sharing with the counselor, who by virtue of his or her position will now take up at least some of the responsibility for finding the best solutions for the given problem. Fourth point, as the client puts his or her feelings into words and communicates them to the counselor, he or she begins to see their own problems in a more objective light. This is extremely important because by doing so, the client is gaining objectivity over his or her own problem. He or she therefore becomes more likely to think of solutions for the problems and to accept the guidance which is going to be given by the counselor. Second technique of supportive techniques, this is known as catharsis. Catharsis as a simple English word refers to the tumultuous expression of pent-up emotions. This is also known in common language as letting off the steam. This often takes the form of tears while the client is expressing his own stress, but may include other expressions also, sometimes such as anger or even rage. Catharsis can be useful at any time during therapy, but it may be more helpful during the early phases of counseling. This will help the client to settle down in the counseling process comfortably. Most people feel better after they have let off the steam in some or the other appropriate way. This release of pent-up emotions or blocked-up emotions inside, this in itself can be very therapeutic for the client. So this is the role of catharsis technique of supportive type. Dear learners, the third technique is called as clarification method. Clarification refers to the process whereby confused thoughts in the client's mind are sorted out so that he understands better the why and the how of his or her feelings and reactions, which means the client will now be explained as to why he or she is feeling that way, or how he or she can get in control of the reactions which are being manifested. To some extent, clarification occurs spontaneously during ventilation. So the two go hand in hand most of the time. The counselor then helps the client clarify further his or her thoughts and feelings. Clarification is an ongoing process. It is almost like a continuity maintained process right through all the stages of the counseling or the therapy sessions. Fourth, This is called as the education technique. As the name suggests, to educate means to give knowledge. So often the provision of information or knowledge about a subject is given, and this can have a very therapeutic impact upon a client. For example, during dealing with adolescents, a little education about the needs of adolescents to develop their own identities, this may reassure a parent who is very anxious about his or her son's newly developed rebelliousness. So, the moment we give information to this anxious parent as to what is the need of the adolescent, why is his adolescent child behaving that way, it has a very therapeutic effect. Education can be imparted at any time of the counseling process, provided the client is sufficiently calm to absorb what is being conveyed to him. Dear learners, moving ahead, the fifth type of technique under supportive techniques is called as the guidance method. Simply put, to guide means to assist, to help, or to advise. The role of guidance in counseling is largely to provide the clients with an assurance and accessibility to advice during periods of uncertainty and to prevent the clients from embarking upon any kind of inadvisable course of behavior or to avoid any kind of deviant behavior. Guidance can be both formal or informal. Informal guidance is usually given by caregivers, friends, relatives, whereas professional guidance is given by expert counselors. Examples of guidance could be, for example, a depressed client may contemplate resigning from his or her job because he or she believes that they are no longer competent in his or her work. In such a scenario, the counselor will give adequate and required guidance and enable the client to understand their own potential and make them reassure and believe once again that they are quite competent in their area of work. Counselors need to be constantly alert to situations in which their guidance may prove invaluable to their clients. This point is particularly important, that is, being constantly alert to situations, because an alert counselor will be able to quickly and adequately modify their techniques of counseling. Moving ahead, we come to the sixth type of supportive technique. This, dear learners, is called as prestige suggestion. Most clients who enter therapy or counseling, it is seen that they usually suffer from low self-esteem, and they also show a loss of self-confidence. They feel that in some or the other way, they are not as competent as others around them are. The counselor in such a situation constantly needs to remind the clients of their positive attributes, their achievements, and their capabilities. In a way, the prestige of the client is restored back, and the client also feels that I am worthy. Clients are better equipped to face their problems when they understand that there is a lot which deserves appreciation in their personality and behavior. It is common observance when a person knows that there is something worthy of appreciation in them, then they show a more confident personality and behavior full of self-esteem. Moving ahead is the next one, dear learners. This is called as environmental manipulation. As the name is suggesting, the counselor manipulates or adjusts or changes the environment of the client. Sometimes an aspect of the client's environment may be contributing to the problem situation in addition to the problem itself. Creating changes in the environment can then be very helpful for the client to overcome the stressful situation. For example, a drug addict could be advised to avoid the company of persons who will encourage his addiction. So, the counselor in such a situation will advise him to stay away from such friends. Usually, individuals, it is reported as staying away from bad company. Another example, it is often seen that siblings are quarreling. Such quarreling siblings could temporarily be advised to stay apart for a short duration of time to avoid a conflict situation. Another example, spouses who are constantly at loggerheads or not getting well along could be advised to go on a short holiday during which they will be away from daily stresses and they could rediscover each other and learn to appreciate each other's personalities and behaviors. Dear learners, the next is externalization of interests. Every individual has some or the other interests or hobbies. Sometimes these hobbies or interests do not get a chance to be expressed, or simply put, we do not get a chance to be actively involved in hobbies of our areas of interests. Externalization of interest simply means that you allow the individual to be involved in some kind of activity which is of his or her interests. Persons who seek counselling are frequently overwhelmed by their own problems. Their problems might feel too big for them to solve on their own. These problems and their consequent unhappiness starts to dominate their lives more often than expected. In such a case, it helps if a client learns to take his or her mind off from those problems by involving themselves in some interesting activity, even if it is only for a short duration of time. At least they get a break from constantly just thinking about the problem. It gives them a respite, it gives them a relief, and instead of just focusing on the problem, they can give time to some soothing activity. Externalization of interests seeks to divert the client's attention from the problematic ideas in his or her mind through engaging or involving themselves in some activity or interest or hobby. For example, it can be suggested to the client by the counselor to take up any kind of dance therapy, music, art and craft, or maybe even gardening, painting, drawing, etc. So, to recap, what all types of therapy, what all types of supportive techniques of counselling we have discussed in today's session, let us just summarize all the various supportive techniques of counselling discussed in today's session. These are: first, ventilation, where the client is allowed to speak about their own problems. Second, catharsis, which is to express their emotions which were bottled up till now inside them. Third, clarification, that is, helping them to understand why they are feeling the way they are feeling right now in the middle of the problem. Fourth, education, that is, giving knowledge about certain aspects related to the problem to gain better insights into it. Fifth, guidance, that is, to assist an individual in knowing his or her own potential and helping them to find out the best possible solution. Sixth, prestige suggestion, in which the prestige or the self-confidence of the client is enhanced by allowing them to know what all there is in their personality worth of appreciation. Seventh, environmental manipulation, which involves manipulating or altering or changing any of the factors in the environment of the client which might be contributing to the problem in some or the other way. And eighth, externalization of interests, that is, allowing the interests of the person to become externally visible or externally used and utilized by the client by involving in some or the other kind of hobby or activity. So, these were the supportive techniques of counseling discussed in today's session. Dear learners, I sincerely hope that you have understood the concepts discussed today and you have learnt well. The remaining part of this topic we shall take up in part 2 of our session, which will be in continuation with this series. Till then, happy learning. See you next time. Thank you, learners.